Yeah, well, never one to go amiss, of course. The leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, spelled out his frustrations with today's political leaders.
I think this has been one of the worst general election campaigns so far between the two main parties I've ever seen in my lifetime. It isn't just that their leaders are dull, well, very dull in the case of Labour. I mean, sort of Blair without the flair. I mean, the real leader of the Labour Party is here tonight on the stage. At least she's got some personality.
That's what's being called damned with faint praise, isn't it?
Isn't it just? Yes, dear me. Well, let's talk to political commentators Alex Petropoulos and Charles Amos, who join us now. Alex, can we start with you? What did you make of it all? Because I tell you what, was the valid point being made last night by a number of them is that this was all about who's going to form the main opposition, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that was a valid point, and you sort of already saw the smaller parties sort of lining up, and they do their standard, the Tories mess things up attack. They'd get that out of the way, and then they'd move on to tackling Labour, and essentially they'd go either down the path of saying, look, Labour, you're just the same as the Tories, you've just shifted to where they're going to be, we're the sensible option to the left of you. And then in the case of Farage, it was more of the case of, look, we should be the opposition instead of the Tories. We're going to tackle issues like immigration. We're going to tackle issues like overpopulation. And so in both cases, it wasn't really making a case for what you had to bring. It was making a case for what Labour and the Tories didn't bring to the table.
Charles, did we learn anything new from that debate?
I don't think so. I think all it confirmed is that Nigel Farage is the only one who isn't part of this social democrat consensus that embraces the net zero agenda. It simply reconfirmed what we already knew, nothing more. And it did so in a way that wasn't very good because they were all talking over each other. As you said previously, that's the issue with seven-party leader debates.
Heck, you have to say, though, in terms of representing the general British opinion, I mean, clearly you think Reform has got a lot to offer from your comments, Charles, but they're still only on, what, 17% of the poll in the good polls?
Well, that's right. But you asked what we had to learn from this debate, and I simply think it's that. Well, it's very little. It's that the main parties all agree with each other and that reform is different. I'm not necessarily in favour of reform, but at least they are offering an alternative to the other parties, particularly, say, on immigration, where Nigel Farage set out a very robust position compared to the Conservatives and particularly all of the left-wing parties.
Is everything being handed on a plate at the moment to Labour? They're playing it very carefully, you can tell, even though, Angela Rayner did get quite excited from time to time. But they're playing it very, very carefully, whereas the Tories just seem to be messing everything up, don't they? Alex?
Yeah, I think that Labour are definitely playing it carefully. I think that they're almost being restricted, and they're restricting themselves in the sense that they want to. They've sort of drawn this battle line with the Tories, and they'll say as much as the Tories will say. But I think that in reality, their plans might be more ambitious than they say they are. Their plans might be slightly different from what they say they are, but they feel the need that they can't actually share the full extent or be honest with the British public about, the fact that public finances are kind of in the muck right now and won't be able to get better for a couple years. I think that they're more serious debates to be having, and there was this criticism thrown from lots of the smaller parties that the Tories and that Labour were in this coalition of silence, that were not being honest with the British public. And I think that, to be honest, that's a valid criticism with what's happening. They've sort of focused on, we can beat the Tories, we'll just agree to match them on whatever they say, and we're the sensible ones. But that's not the case.
That is a valid point, Charles, isn't it? I mean, the Institute for Fiscal Studies has said that whoever gets in at the next election needs to vigorously deal with the financial situation that we're in, and that is either going to mean, according to the IFS, substantial cuts in public services or substantial tax rises.
Well, I think they're right. If you look at the budget deficit in this country, it's £130 billion. And I think the reason why the Labour Party is not being entirely open about their policies is because they don't want to say anything popular which might impede their lead over the Conservatives. And to be quite honest, it is actually a way of remaining honest with the electorate. If they don't make any promises or grand pledges now, then if they have to do anything that's unpopular into the future, at least they won't be breaking a promise. Funnily enough, that's something that Margaret Thatcher did in 1979. She went in with a manifesto which had very, very few commitments because she knew that she would have to deal with a great number of problems that if she had said in her manifesto how she was going to deal with them, meant she wouldn't have got elected, or she would have broken her promises had she got elected on popular policies, which would have actually solved the problem.
That's being honest by default, almost, isn't it? If you don't promise anything, you can't be brought up on it later. But it doesn't. I mean, it's just confusion, isn't it? And it's not fair to voters. They need to know what they're being asked to vote for, don't they? Either of you,
I think
Charles.
the issue with that is that if you're entirely honest with voters, they're not going to vote for you. Now, if all of the parties were honest with voters, then it wouldn't be an issue because everybody would be on a level playing field. But the first party to be honest with voters is going to be at, or rather open with voters, is going to be at a serious disadvantage. So no party has an incentive to be open with voters. So I actually think the Labour Party, when it comes to being honest with voters, is doing the right thing by not making grand promises, pledges, solemn promises, and having to break those into the future due to the realities of the situation and the fact they simply can't foresee the future.
Well, that's very interesting.
I think that, to be honest, maybe I'm a bit optimistic here, but I'd actually like one of the parties to be honest. The thing I was thinking watching the debate was, we keep getting at, what will you do for the NHS? Save it. What will you do for policing? Save it. What will you do for housing? Save it. We can't save all these problems. We can't fix all of the problems. What I was waiting for was for one of the parties to essentially say, look, this is our priority, and this is what is not our priority, frankly. This is what we're not going to fix for 5 years. And because that is the conversation we will be having when Labour get elected. It will be, what is the priority? What are we going to choose to fix? We can maybe choose to fix one or two of the problems, and we're going to have to ignore and maybe get worse the other ones. So I want a party to pretty clearly lay out to me, this is the problem that we're not going to address. This is the cut that we're going to choose to make as a country, and we're going to make sure that we all sort of collectively feel the burden together. So it's not just one group that suffers.
Good luck finding a politician who'll say that.
Yeah, it's interesting, though. Interesting
Fascinating
points from both
point.
of you.
Yeah.
Alex Petropoulos, Charles Amos, thanks both very much indeed.
Thank you.